Hello, and welcome to lesson 81 of the Learning Guitar series. In this particular lesson, we're going to look at slash chords, first from the point of view of harmony and theory, and then we're going to look at some interesting practical applications. In order for you to follow this lesson, hopefully you'll have covered already the lessons on triads that I did, and that will be the last 4 lessons, I think 77 to 80. And also you'll need an understanding of, in this case, of the major modes. So you're looking at lesson 1 to 39, in order to cover all the modes. Let's dive straight into it, into harmony theory, and let's see how we get to then the conclusions that we get to. So in this particular page, what I just highlighted here is the family of chords, just a quick reminder of the intervals that you need in order to be calling something, say, major or minor or augmented. When we looked at the triads recently, you discovered that major is 1-3-5, minor is 1-flat-3-5, and then you had augmented triads 1-3-sharp-5, and diminished triads 1-flat-3-flat-5. There is other family of chords. In this case, for example, dominant is the same as a major in terms of interval, but with a flat 7. So this is the interval that defines the dominant 7 chords. And then the same thing for off diminished. If you look at the first 3 notes, is the same as diminished. And the flat 7, once again, is what defines an off diminished type of chord. And for diminished, same thing. Once we extend it, you see the difference between diminished and off diminished, because now you have a double flat 7, which is equal to a 6 in terms of intervals. And that's what is differentiated for an off diminished. Last but not least, I put some sus kind of chords. 1-5, 1-4-5, so what, sus2 or sus9, and sus4 or sus11. And the reason I didn't put them next to the actual triads is because in a way sus chords by definition don't want to belong to a family of chords. The lack of a 3, as you can see, what's in common to all this and what at times really defines what kind of family of chords you're dealing with is the third. Major 3 defines a major chord, while flat 3 defines a minor chord. And as you can see, the root note and the fifth are in common. So it's literally this note, this individual note, which is defining that chord. The same thing here is a sharp 5 that is defining versus a major that this is an augmented. And diminished is a flat 5 versus the 5 that you find in minor, and the rest is in common. So 2 and 4 here, the lack of a 3 in a way. This defines the fact that these are suspended. This could go next to a major chord, it could go next to a minor chord, it could go next to a dominant chord, etc., etc. Now what you have down here, in order to explain you slash chords and the theory of it, is basically just a G Ionian, horizontal stretcher, so here is your scale, and the equivalent vertical stretcher, so here is your modal arpeggio. Bear in mind, we could have done this example with Dorian, with Phrygian, any of the major modes. So what you need to ask yourself is, okay, if I take these 3 notes here in this vertical stretcher, in this case we're in the key of G, so you're looking at G, B, and D. Now these 3 notes clearly spell G major. And if I was to take these 4 notes, like we did in the past, for example, when we constructed chords for Ionian, I think it must have been lesson 3, literally. The equivalent of this, once we add an F sharp to our chord, we will get a G major 7, okay? Because you have 1-3-5 major 7. And again, if I continue adding notes, if I add the 9, then I would have a G major 9, and if I add an 11, I would have a G major 11, etc. And in practical terms, what that means is, like, we started from the idea that I could play a big G major. And the moment I add an F sharp, maybe I have this kind of voicing. And I have a G major 7. Or let's say I'm adding a 9 to it, which is here. Now I have a G added 9, for example. And so forth and so on. But it's still voicings that comes from the shape of E in this case, and the chord is G. So I would have all these kind of major voicings. And this is what we started in lesson 3. You had all these kind of voicings for Ionian. What we're looking at now instead is think differently. And what I'm thinking of is, okay, Instead of taking 1, 3, 5, let's take 3, 5, and 7. So let's just take these 3 notes. And in this case, I have, this is a B minor. If I look at this note from the perspective of B, B is the root note, D is the flat 3, and F sharp is the 5. So this is a B minor. Okay? If I add a G in the bass, now I have a slash chord. So it's B minor over G. That's the definition of it. And when I play B minor over G, I'm actually playing this. Hold on. It's the equivalent of me playing G. This is the equivalent of G major 7. Because I'm still playing the same notes, right? In fact, if I play you B minor, triad, I'm using the string group 2, 3, 4. And I put G in the bass. That's what I get. I get a G major 7, right? If I take a B minor triad, it's just that now I'm literally thinking triads over a bass chord. Let's keep going and we'll see how far we can go with this. Let's say, for example, like I'm going to take these 3 notes. So now it's 5, 7, and 9. Again, we are in the key of G. So D would be the 5. F sharp is the major 7. And by the way, when I write here 7, I mean major 7, not a flat 7, right? And A is the 5, is the 9 in this case for G. Now, if I look at D, F sharp, A, well, this is a D major triad. In a way, it's me like writing D over G. And I get 5, 7, and 9. And so if we look at it from a practical point of view, now I just have to deal with a D triad. Maybe let's use this, same string group as before, with G in the bass. And now I'm highlighting 5, 7, 9 of that particular major chord. So before we had the B minor over G and D over G. I could have played D down here over G. That would still work. Now, so far it's kind of simple if you think about it. I can go and analyze what 7, 9, and 11 formulates like, and then I can analyze 9, 11, and 13, and we will do that in a second. But the reason you have this page before we actually look at the PDF that comes with this lesson is, okay, the more observant of you might argue, if I put this note together, I put the 1, 5, 7, and 9, which is what I just did playing D over G. So if I have this, 1, 5, 7, and 9, well, is this a major? Is this minor? I mean, we don't have a 3 in there, okay? So the more I go away from the root and the third, the more I use this triad, this triad, this triad over G in this case, the more I actually like, this is not a major chord as such. One of the limitations of the guitar is the fact that, of course, we cannot fret every single note. When, you know, we cannot play 7 notes at a time, for example. Hence, we tend to use slash chord particularly when the melody anyway is suggesting a certain tonality. What I mean by that is, if the melody is Ionian, it doesn't matter that actually my slash chord doesn't contain the 3. You will still hear somehow an Ionian type of sound. So in a way, the scale, the key of the song, or if we use multiple keys like in jazz, kind of dictates the sound that you're using. As you will see, slash chords that are, for example, 1, 9, 11, and 13, they could belong to Ionian, they could belong to Dorian, which is a minor kind of scale. So in a way, the melody, the actual melody, is what is going to dictate, oh, this sounds minor to me, or this sounds major to me. And that's a limitation of the guitar, because, for example, piano players can because they have 10 fingers, obviously. They can always play the triad, so 1, 3, 5 or 1 flat 3, 5 on their left hand and play the extensions with the right hand. So basically superimposing triads on top of each other. So they can have 1 flat 3, 5 here and 9, 11, and 13 on the right hand. We cannot really do that, unless there is 2 guitars on stage. But even in these terms, you come across some very, very interesting harmonies. Let's finish off the Ionian and see what else we can do, and then I'll give you like a practical demonstration of this. So far we said that we could have B minor over G, and that would give us basically this. Then we said that we could have D over G, and now we would have 1, 5, 7, and 9. Let's keep going. So now let's take 7, 9, and 11. Okay, and 7, 9, and 11 from a G perspective, we are looking at F sharp. That's the major 7. The 9 is from a G perspective is A. And the 11 from G perspective is C. So now I have F sharp, A, and C. And this is a diminished triad. It's F sharp diminished. Because from an F sharp perspective, A is the flat 3 and C is a flat 5. So here, 1 flat 3, flat 5. Let's keep going. And obviously this is over G. 9, 11, and 13. So from a G perspective, the 9 is A, the 11 is C, and the 13 is E. And this is an A minor triad. If this is the root note, this is a flat 3 and this is a 5. So here is a minor triad. So what I'm looking at is A minor over G. And again, it means only I have the root note and basically this extension. I'm extending my Ionian mode, although I'm not using the third in there. Let's look at 11, 13, 1. So I have 11, 13, and 1. So I'm going up the second octave. The 11 for G is C, the 13 is E, and of course back I have the root note. And C, E, G is basically a C major triad. So now I have C over G. Last but not least, in this case, we are having 13, 1, and 3. So in this case, which I can call it like kind of a major. It could be also an augmented because we have like 13, 1, and 3. Technically, this could be major, could be augmented, could be dominant. But again, we are looking for Ionian sound. And again, if you look at it from a G point of view, now you have an E note. Obviously, root note is G, and the third is B. And E, G, B spells E minor. So now you have E minor over G. And in this case, as you can see, we kind of spelled everything that we could spell. So as you can see now, in terms of spelling the Ionian mode using slash chords, we can think of it in terms of B minor over G. Actually, I'm going to just loop a G note. Now we have B minor over G, which gives us basically the major 7 kind of effect. Then we say we have D. Then we looked at the F sharp diminished. Then we looked at A minor. A C major triad. An E minor triad. And of course I can use a G triad, like 1, 3, 5. So now you have these kind of voicings, which are not difficult because you're basically just using triads, over a bass note. Now, when I said it's the melody that somehow is going to define the sound of major in this case, because we're going to be using an Ionian melody on top of this. And I suggested that I mention it because, as I said, when you were using slash chord, somehow like we removed, most of the time, we actually removed the third from the interval we are playing. And, you know, I could not write, oh, that's a G major. No, that's a D over G, you know. Our ears are going to perceive it as major because the melody itself. So I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm literally going to play you. I'm going to loop a G major scale, in this case, Ionian. Let's put G in the bass. And now let's use triads, right? So B minor, D, F sharp off diminished, A minor, E minor, we say D, I hope it makes sense, right? Now, let's look at the PDF that I created for this lesson. And so basically, this PDF is a sum of what we just looked at. So in this case, we looked at Ionian, and what you have here in this first line is the modal arpeggio, where R, by the way, is the root note, so it's 1. So the modal arpeggio for Ionian is 1, 3, 5, major 7, 9, 11, 13. And from each of those notes, I got the triads, like we did before. 1, 3, 5. This is 3, 5, major 7, 5, major 7, 9, major 7, 9, 11, 9, 11, and 13, 11, 13, and root note, 13, root note, and 3. And basically figured out what kind of triad that we're looking at. So this is a major triad, this is a minor triad, this is a major triad, etc., etc., etc. Now let's transfer this into slash chords. So what this chart now is telling you is from the root note, you have a major triad. And so basically you're looking at a major triad that starts from the root note. In this case, and then you have an example, which is C. Then if you go from the third of whatever chord, I mean, bear in mind, this tries to be in every key. So this is the key of X. Before, when we looked at the example, we looked at the key of G. This is in the key of X, okay? So when it says third, what it means in the key of C, the third of C is E, if you look at the C scale. And the triad we're developing from the E note is a minor triad. So the slash chords becomes a minor 3, so an E minor, over the root note. So you have E minor over C. If you go from the fifth, so again, let's do this in C. The fifth of C is G. Now from the G note, you have a major triad. So what you're looking at is a G major triad. And the way you would spell the slash chord would be 5 over R. So G over C. If you go from the major 7 of C, so in the case of C, it is B. You have a diminished triad. This is what I'm using as a reference. So I have a diminished triad. So what I'm getting is major 7, 9, 11. A diminished triad. So from the 7th chord, a diminished triad over R. In this case, would be B diminished over C. For the 9th, so again, the 9th of C is D. Now I have a minor triad. So from 9, 11, and 13, I have a minor triad. So basically, it's chord number 2, because 9 and 2 is the same, over R. So I have D minor over C, etc., etc. The beauty of this PDF, and more importantly, the reason for its existence, this PDF is going to be a bit like a dictionary. As you noticed, in order to figure out all the slash chords for each individual mode, It means to go through each modal arpeggio, isolate every single triad, and figure out, okay, this is this triad over this bass note, which is, is a work that I suggest you doing anyway if you can, because it kind of, you learn more by doing it yourself in that sense. You understand probably the harmony and theory of it even more than the way I can possibly explain it to you. But when you're trying to play, when you're trying to compose, or when you want to use this stuff, you can use this PDF as a reference. I'll be like, what can I do in terms of slash chords over that mode? Okay, let me consult the dictionary. Okay, I can try this, this, and this. Now, the way this is structured, here is the your Ionian mode. Here is the equivalent of what we just discussed for the Dorian mode. Again, this is the modal arpeggio. These are all the triads that we have inside, and this is basically how they translate in minor, major, minor, major, minor, major, diminished. And here now you look at the slash chords, where, again, this time we're going from the flat 3, so if this is C, the flat 3 will be E flat, and I apply a major triad to it. So this is what the chord will look like. So it's a flat 3 major chord, and in this case would be E flat over C. And again, you can have G minor over C, B flat over C, D minor over C, F over C, and A diminished over C. And this will be the sound of Dorian. Let's look at it from a practical point of view, and let's use C as a reference, since it's the example in the PDF. C Dorian. Let's loop the scale first. And let's also loop the bass. And now let's put some triads in there. So of course I can use C minor, that will be 1 flat 3 5. We also know we can use E flat, G minor, B flat, D minor, F, and A minor diminished. So A diminished. And they all work. Another interesting application of this is, of course, in terms of soloing, because now the reason I'm playing the scale up and down is to give you a reference, but I could easily, instead of just playing pedantically up and down, just, improvise over Dorian. So I can have, as we did, for example, like C minor over C. Let's have maybe D minor over C. Let's do it this way. Let's put C in the bass. And now we're just in C Dorian, but as you can see, you have this perception of chords changing, but they're still C chords. I hope it makes sense, right? Let's go back to the PDF. So as you can see here, you have Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. And more importantly, here you have a recap at the end. which is basically your dictionary kind of things. Probably is what you're going to look at when you're looking for a quick answer. So here is the Ionian, which is, root, then chord number 3 minor over the root, so that's slash chord, a major triad from the 5th over the root chord, etc., etc. And here you have a few examples of, all written in C. In case you just want, let's say that you're doing this in G as opposed to in C, you can take this and transpose it to G, okay? Or, a semitone up, whatever it is, the situation you're in. Let's look at now another interesting application of this. What we're going to do actually is, as an experiment, I haven't, this is not, as you know, this is not necessarily rehearsed, but let's stick to the key of C. In this case, we're going to have key of C and moving across different modes. So we're going to have root and then use different triads according to what mode we're kind of hinting into. So maybe let's do, I don't know, Phrygian. So we're going to do some degree of C Phrygian, C Lydian, and C Dorian, and maybe C Ionian. Okay. Now, if I look at the chart, so this is when we're going basically fishing for triads in this case. So if I look at Phrygian, so maybe I can do B flat minor over C. Why not? And for Lydian, actually, we're going to use B minor over C. So literally, we're going with the triad, we're literally only going a semitone up, and it's going to give us now suddenly a major type of sound. And for Dorian, we're going to go to B flat over C. So now it's a major triad over C. And let's say we're going to A minor over C for Ionian. Or we can literally, if we want to resolve it, we're just going to go over just a C triad. So B flat minor triad, B minor triad, B flat over C, and then just a triad of C. And bear in mind, this is an excellent exercise in terms of you practicing your scales. Once you have this, say, I'm going to loop this harmonic progression, and maybe give enough time for each chord to develop, so I can then play some ideas, okay? Some melodic ideas. So let's loop. So we said B flat minor. So, B minor. B flat triad. C triad. And now we're going to record in a second, like we're going to have basically just C in the bass, okay? Phrygian, Lydian, Dorian, Ionian, Phrygian, Lydian, Dorian, Ionian, Phrygian, Lydian, Dorian. Of course, this sounding kind of a little bit jazzy fusion-y because this is not a diatonic type of progression. Basically, every chord we're kind of changing key, we're playing modally. Does this mean that this cannot be applied to pop music, to diatonic music? Well, of course you can. Of course you're going to come up with interesting voicings because of it. Let's take a typical chord progression in the same key. So let's do this maybe, again, let's maybe keep let's keep the key of C. We're going to do a 1 2 6 4. 1 2 6 4 in the key of C means C, D minor, and A minor, and F, which is basically and if we look at it from a modal perspective, obviously C is Ionian and D minor is Dorian because it's chord number 2, and then we have A minor, which is Aeolian because it's chord number 6, and F is Lydian because it's chord number 4. But because it's diatonic, a C scale would, from a melodic point of view, resolve the entire progression. I don't have to keep changing scale. Now let's look though, how can we make the chord voicings a little bit more interesting using slash chords. So in the case of Ionian, we know, and again you can consult the chart, but let's use maybe A minor. So A minor over C, okay? So it's going to sound kind of like this. Now if we look at, let's do this together so you understand. Chord number 2, I have basically Dorian, and in this case it will be D minor. Now I can go to the flat 3 of D, which in this case will be F, and play F over D. So now you have D with an F triad. So now we had now for A minor, being chord number 6, we're looking at Aeolian. And I don't know, let's use this part. So like his chord number is the flat 7 major triad over a root note. So what's the flat 7 of A? Well, it's G, right? We have a G triad over A. So this is a G triad over A. Now for F, we have basically Lydian. So let's see, we can use maybe this one. It looks interesting. So basically chord number 2, a major triad over the root note. So from an F perspective, chord number 2 is still G. And it's basically a G over F, what we're looking at. So let's loop this. And so don't forget, we're playing A minor in terms of triads. We're playing A minor, F, G, and then still G. So let's have A minor triad. G. And that's an interesting sound. And this is just key of C, as we said, so this is just a C Ionian scale. I'm not really too concerned about all the key changes. And of course, C major also means C major pentatonic. And as a guitar player, we might like the relative minor better, so you're thinking A minor pentatonic. And if you remember from our lesson in pentatonic, I can always switch to a C minor pentatonic to create some tension before resolving it back to C major pentatonic. So C major, minor, one last concept, again, like you can apply this to so many different things. As an exercise, you can always take literally four random chords, G major, D minor, B flat major, F. Okay. And what you're going to do is first decide, okay, this G major is Ionian or is it Lydian? Because in this case, we're sticking to major modes. In the next lessons, we're going to look again at slash chords, but apply it to melodic minor, harmonic minor, to even get more complex forms of harmony. But even if we just stick to major modes, you're basically deciding, okay, is this G Ionian or Lydian? Because those are the two major kind of scale associated with the major chords. And then I know D minor, is D minor Dorian or is D minor Phrygian, is D minor Aeolian? You get to decide. And once you decide what mode it is, now you can apply the slash chords that apply to that mode. Same thing, once it gets to B flat major, okay, is it major or is it the Lydian? And again, slash chords apply to that. And you can design a little chart with that and practice your scales. This kind of harmony theory, I realize, is kind of maybe a little bit overwhelming in terms of magnitude, and it's going to take some time to kind of memorize or remember. Okay, when I'm in Lydian, these are the slash chords I can use. It's not as immediate. It's going to come with time. At the same time, the function of the PDF is exactly that. It's a dictionary, so you can quickly, figure it out and play, right? So I hope it makes sense. Now, I explained to you where does the theory behind the slash chords comes from, and how we derive this kind of chart, so that you don't take this chart as like kind of dogmatic, that thinking that it's like that because it is like that. No, I simply went through every single mode and looked at all the triad contains. I said the only thing bear in mind compared to a piano player is the moment you remove the third, so you're applying triads without a third, at that point we are in the realm of slash chords, as opposed to the chords we're more familiar with, which are based on triads 1-3-5, 1-flat-3-5, the family of chords I showed. I hope this makes sense. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. More importantly, I hope you'll find it useful. And until next time, goodbye.